President Trump just fought and won the world's shortest trade war ever. Just yesterday, we announced how Donald Trump had imposed tariffs on both Mexico and Canada because he was unhappy with the way they were just letting illegal aliens and fentanyl and drugs and gang members and murderers and thugs over their borders into the United States of America. And he imposed a 25% tariff on Saturday for both Mexico and Canada with certain concessions and certain limitations for energy and whatnot. And on Sunday, man, the Canadians and the Mexicans, they just went crazy. They imposed their own tariffs and they started pulling bourbon off the shelves in Canada. And Chuck Schumer started yelling about avocados and Corona beer. And then yesterday, they realized that after 48 hours of Donald Trump's tariffs, they'd both just had enough. Donald Trump posted on his Truth Social just after this program aired yesterday. I just spoke with President Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico. It was a very friendly conversation wherein she agreed to immediately supply 10,000 Mexican soldiers on the border separating Mexico and the United States. These soldiers will be specifically designated to stop the flow of fentanyl and illegal migrants into our country. We further agreed to immediately pause the anticipated tariffs for a 1-month period during which we will still have negotiations headed by Secretary of State Marco Rubio, Secretary of the Treasury Scott Bessent, and Secretary of Commerce Howard Lutnick, and high-level representatives of Mexico. I look forward to participating in those negotiations with President Sheinbaum as we attempt to achieve a deal between our two countries. So within 48 hours, Mexico folded and waved the white flag, or the flag blanca, as they say in Mexico, and gave in to Donald Trump. They said, okay, fine, we're going to send 10,000 troops to the border. Just please don't impose those tariffs because they would crush our economy even more so than it is. Then all eyes turned to Canada. They all turned to Canada, where Donald Trump was expected to speak with, and Donald Trump did speak with Governor. I'm sorry. I still, ever since he called him the governor of the 51st state, that gets stuck in my head. Prime Minister, still for the time being, Justin Trudeau. And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau spoke with Donald Trump twice yesterday afternoon. And after the second phone call, Donald Trump went back to Truth Social, where he was happy to announce Canada has agreed to ensure we have a secure northern border and to finally end the deadly scourge of drugs like fentanyl that have been pouring into our country, killing hundreds of thousands of Americans while destroying their families and communities all across our country. Canada will implement their $1.3 billion border plan, and as per Prime Minister Trudeau, and you'll notice he didn't call him governor there, will be reinforcing the border with new choppers, technology, and personnel, enhanced coordination with our American partners, and increased resources to stop the flow of fentanyl. Nearly 10,000 frontline personnel are and will be working on protecting the border. In addition, Canada is making new commitments to appoint a fentanyl czar. We will list cartels as terrorists, ensure 24/7 eyes on the border, launch a Canada-U.S. joint strike force to combat organized crime, fentanyl, and money laundering. I have also signed a new intelligence directive on organized crime and fentanyl, and we are backing it with $200 million. So Donald Trump, in 48 hours, was able to get 10,000 troops on the Mexican border. He was able to get 10,000 troops on the Canadian border. He was able to get Canada to institute a fentanyl czar. He was able to get them to dedicate new technology and helicopters and all kinds of other resources to the fight against drugs coming into the United States of America. And he did it all in record time by imposing tariffs, which, of course, the Democrats say do not work, except, of course, when they do. And the big problem with this, or the big thing that people don't understand, is that Donald Trump wasn't trying to issue a trade war at all, even though he won it pretty quickly. What Donald Trump was trying to do was to keep Americans safe from the flow of illegal fentanyl and other crimes and criminals from these cartels. And Senator Marshall from Kansas was on some news program, and he basically summed it up really well. This was not a trade war. This was a drug war.
This is the art of the deal. This is who Donald Trump is. I just want to emphasize that this is a drug war and not a trade war. Every day we lose about 200 Americans from fentanyl poisoning. We lose more Americans every year from fentanyl poisoning than we did during the entire Vietnam War. So to President Trump, this is very serious. It's good to see Mexico and Canada both step up to the plate and say, we're going to be responsible for our side of the border. I want to emphasize one more thing, is that a lot of these fentanyl precursors are now being made in laboratories in Canada, so Mr. Trudeau needs to be smashing those laboratories up as well. So a great day for President Trump, a huge victory for America.
Yeah, and not too bad day for Canada and Mexico either, because now they avoid those crushing tariffs for just a couple of months. And this is all it is. It's basic math. Donald Trump says you can pay us money in tariffs, and then what we'll do is we'll use that money probably to beef up our own security, or you could just beef up the security. So in Canada and in Mexico, they had to get their accountants, or their los accountones, I think is how you call it, and they had to figure out what was going to be the cost. Was it going to be a higher cost to spend money to secure the border, or was it going to be a higher cost to pay all these tariffs and lose all these potential jobs? And they figured out that the tariffs were much more expensive, which Donald Trump knew going into all of them. Donald Trump knew exactly what was going to happen. I don't think maybe he didn't think it would happen this quickly, but he knew exactly what was going to happen. And as a result, the tariffs are lifted for 30 days. And Donald Trump got exactly what he wanted: enhanced protection for Americans in both Canada and in Mexico. Byron Donalds, the congressman from Florida, who is rumored to be running for the governor in 2026 when Ron DeSantis' term is up, he was at the White House, and he also commented that this is yet another version, or yet another instance of promises made and promises kept by President Donald Trump.
Donald Trump told you he was going to do everything to secure this nation, and that's what he's done. No talking points, no silly blue ribbon panels that go nowhere, that do absolutely decisive action with results. That's what Donald Trump has brought here. Listen, nobody wants to be in an out-and-out trade war. There's other things that need to occur. But Canada and Mexico, both of them, had to know how serious we are. They are going to commit the resources. The president, in my view, this is a win for him. But more importantly, this is a win for the American people. Fentanyl has been killing more Americans than anything else in our country. The number one cause of death between the ages of 18 and 45. The drug cartels have had operational control of both of our borders, Larry. This has got to change. Donald Trump promised it, and he has delivered.
And he will continue to promise things, and he will continue to deliver things, and he will do that every single day. In fact, he has signed executive orders yesterday. He's planning on signing more executive orders today. I imagine he's got executive orders ready to go for later in the week as well, and we will update you with all of the information as it comes in. The other big story, of course, is the dissolution of, or the destruction of, the USAID. Elon Musk and the Doge, at the behest of Donald Trump, have gone into the agency and locked out the individuals who are in charge. They've searched through the computers, and the USAID is on the brink of being destroyed. Yesterday, Marco Rubio, who is the Secretary of State of the United States and was just appointed the head of the USAID, they moved the entire USAID under the umbrella of the State Department. Here's what he had to say about the organization and its impending demise.
You're now the head of USAID. The head of Doge, Elon Musk, called USAID a criminal organization and added that it is time for it to die. Do you agree with that?
They have basically evolved into an agency that believes that they're not even a U.S. government agency, that they are a global charity, that they take the taxpayer money and they spend it as a global charity, irrespective of whether it is in the national interest or not in the national interest. One of the most common complaints you will get if you go to embassies around the world from State Department officials and ambassadors and the like is USAID is not only not cooperative, they undermine the work that we're doing in that country. They are supporting programs that upset the host government for whom we're trying to work with on a broader scale and so forth. So they're completely unresponsive. They just don't consider that they work for the U.S. They just think they're a global entity and that their master is the globe and not the United States. And that's not what the statute says, and that's not sustainable.
Can it be reformed, or does it need to die?
Well, that was always the goal, was to reform it. But now we have rank insubordination. Now we have basically an active effort where their basic attitude is, we don't work for anyone. We work for ourselves. No agency of government can tell us what to do. So the president made me the acting administrator. I've delegated that power to someone who's there full time, and we're going to go through the same process at USAID as we're going through now at the State Department. I think there are this is not about getting rid of foreign aid. There are things that we do through USAID that we should continue to do. That makes sense. And we'll have to decide, is that better through the State Department, or is that better through something, a reformed USAID? That's the process we're working through. There are things that are happening at USAID that we should not be involved in funding, or that we have a lot of questions about, but they're completely uncooperative. So we had no choice but to take dramatic steps to bring this thing under control.
Do you think that?
And those dramatic steps include locking people out of their computers, sending in the Doge unit, making sure that they are not funding programs or international strategies that we don't agree with, that run contrary to our moral standard. And in a lot of ways, Secretary Rubio is 100% right. They feel like they're an international organization and not a United States agency. The United States Agency for International Development is what USAID is, and they basically are a slush fund for a lot of programs that find out basically a lot of foreign entities, and also a lot of domestic entrepreneurs, let's call them, have found a way to take advantage of the USAID by starting, groups, or by starting activist groups, and then getting money and donations, and they find themselves tens of thousands of dollars richer from American taxpayers for things that don't necessarily need to be done. In fact, Caroline Leavitt, press secretary, was stopped at the White House yesterday, and she was ready, man. She was armed with a list of some of the most ridiculous things that we've been funding with taxpayer dollars through the USAID.
Through USAID over the past several years, these are some of the insane priorities that organization has been spending money on. $1.5 million to advance DEI in Serbia's workplaces, $70,000 for a production of a DEI musical in Ireland, $47,000 for a transgender opera in Colombia, $32,000 for a transgender comic book in Peru. I don't know about you, but as an American taxpayer, I don't want my dollars going towards this crap, and I know the American people don't either, and that's exactly what Elon Musk has been tasked by President Trump to do, to get the fraud, waste, and abuse out of our federal government.
Now, as you can imagine, there's a lot of liberals who make a lot of money from the USAID, and they're just angry. They're so mad. They went out there, they protested. They had thousands of people standing outside of the USAID office because they weren't allowed to go in, and they were screaming and yelling about President Donald Trump and Elon Musk. In fact, Ilhan Omar, the congresswoman from, where is she from? Minnesota. She claims that Donald Trump has just destroyed the Constitution of the United States of America, a document that she clearly is not familiar with.
It is really, really a sad day in America. We are witnessing a constitutional crisis. We talked about Trump wanting to be a dictator on day one, and here we are. This is what the beginning of dictatorship looks like. When you gut the Constitution and you install yourself as the sole power, that is how dictators are made.
I'm pretty sure Donald Trump's not the sole power. I'm pretty sure he's not a dictator, because if he were the sole power, he'd have all of his cabinet officials confirmed and ready to go in the positions that they're in. But lo and behold, that's not the truth. And as far as authority goes, Donald Trump has the authority to appoint Elon Musk or whomever else he wants to go into an organization, especially a foreign aid organization or any organization in the United States government that involves themselves in foreign policy. And if you don't believe me, just listen to Deputy Chief of Staff Stephen Miller. He'll tell you.
So he has plenary authority to carry out the foreign policy of the United States. So bureaucrats at USAID cannot interfere in the affairs of foreign countries to prop up regimes, to thwart America's interests, to facilitate mass illegal immigration, nor to facilitate diversity, equity, and inclusion policies which violate federal civil rights law. All this DEI BS violates the federal civil rights law of the United States. So the president is at the apex of authority here. Moreover, as you mentioned, Congress doesn't dictate to these agencies how to spend the money. agencies exercise discretion on these grants, on these contracts. So take, for example, funding to these non-governmental organizations, NGOs, that fund open borders. So they funnel tens of billions of dollars to these open borders private sector orgs. Congress never passed a law giving those organizations that money. President Trump can not only pause all those funds, not only can the agencies pause those funds, but agencies can instead, if they wanted to, give those funds to organizations that support border security, that deport illegal aliens, that find criminal aliens, that provide detention for dangerous illegal immigrants in this country. There's no law passed by Congress that says that we have to funnel money to organizations that traffic children. Quite the opposite. These are crimes. Illegal immigration is a crime. DEI is a crime.
And that's and Donald Trump is, of course, the chief law enforcement agent in the United States of America. And he's going to round up those criminals wherever they are. And he's going to make sure that he brings them to justice. Now, there was some exciting news also at the White House yesterday, an exciting event that happened because, as you know, the president is not only the chief executive, but he's also the chief party thrower. He's also the guy that brings all the sports teams to the White House when they win, and he throws them parties. And there's a lot of festivities and pomp and circumstance. And in between strong-arming Canada and Mexico into doing what you want and bombing ISIS and gutting government waste in these ridiculous bureaucratic agencies and taking back the Panama Canal, in between all of that, Donald Trump takes time to hang out with hockey teams that win the Stanley Cup, like the Florida Panthers, who were invited to the White House. They came into the Oval Office. They brought the Stanley Cup with them. And you may notice they all dressed in blue suits and red ties in what is clearly an homage to their favorite president. And it did not go unnoticed by Donald Trump.
I love all these ties. This is so cute. I walked in, I said, I think they like Trump. I like them.
There has never been a sports team that I can recall that has shown up at the White House and has dressed like the president of the United States. They didn't dress like Biden. They didn't dress like Obama. In fact, I remember Harrison Butker, when the Kansas City Chiefs came, he wore a coded message in his tie to send to people about how much he disagreed with President Joe Biden's policies on anti-Catholic practices and abortion. But now you've got the entire Florida Panthers hockey team dressed like Trump. And that is, they're there so that President Donald Trump can honor them in their win. And instead, they end up honoring him. And it wasn't just that they honored him with the red ties. They gave him a jersey and a golden hockey stick.
We've got a few gifts for you. Bark, you want to give me out?
If you're going to give Donald Trump a hockey stick, it better be gold-plated. And, of course, the jersey says Trump 47. I mean, these guys were so thrilled. They were so excited. And Donald Trump was so excited to be there. And the thing about Donald Trump, whenever these teams come, is Donald Trump knows everything. Donald Trump is a regular guy. He watches TV, he watches the news, he watches sports, he knows what's going on. And when he speaks, he doesn't need a pre-planned or pre-written speech because he was there. He experienced it live and he can speak off the cuff. And that's exactly what he did. And he made a comment which had everybody in stitches.
And after coming up just short of the Stanley Cup the year prior, you gave the fans one of the most riveting comebacks in NHL history and any sport history. I don't know anything about a comeback, but they tell me it's very exciting. I never viewed mine as a comeback. This was not a comeback.
Yeah, the Florida Panthers, if you don't remember, last year, 2 years ago, they lost the Stanley Cup. Then last year, they won the first 3 games of the Stanley Cup final, lost 3 games in a row. It came down to a Game 7, and they were able to finally pull it out, and they were able to win. Look, there's so much going on. It's not just winning with the border agents and the border war. It's not just winning the war against drugs and fentanyl. It's not just using tariffs to do what we need other countries to do in order to support and protect us. It's not just all of those things. It's not just bringing hockey players to the White House. There is so much good news and there is so much winning. In fact, Caroline Levitt released that she was on Sean Hannity. She went through an entire list of all the winning that Donald Trump has done in the short time since he took office.
There is so much good news, so much winning out of the Trump White House right now that the mainstream legacy media can't keep up with it, because President Trump is signing executive order after executive order, delivering on promise after promise, and implementing fundamental change of our bloated bureaucracy and our corrupt government here in Washington, D.C. He was given a once-in-a-generation mandate by the American people to govern and to fundamentally transform Washington, and that's exactly what he is doing. And we finally, after 4 years of chaos and mayhem and apologizing for America, have a president again in the Oval Office who is standing up for America. And this is what it looks like when you have a leader of our great nation who uses the leverage of the United States, who understands that since our nation's founding, we have been viewed as that shining light on the hill. We have been viewed, rightfully so, as the best, proudest country in the world. And President Trump is not afraid to say that or to use that for the American people's benefit. And that's why you have seen so many countries around the world in just a matter of 2 weeks cave to President Trump's demands. In the past 24 hours, you have Canada and Mexico agreeing to help secure our southern and northern borders. And these tariffs that President Trump threatened to impose on both Canada and Mexico, and they were sign, seal, deliver, I may add, those were retaliatory tariffs for the last 4 years of treatment by Canada and Mexico of our nation. They have allowed an unprecedented wave of illegal deadly drugs and illegal criminals on our territorial borders. And President Trump said, enough is enough.
And that about sums it up. So I don't know, nothing more for me to say, except I do have more to say. And I will say it later today at noon on my second daily podcast, Mark Kaye Saves the Republic. If you love the 47 Daily and you want more information and more news, not just from President Trump, but from around the world and with other agencies and what's going on with the all important Senate confirmations. If you want to know about Donald Trump's latest executive orders, everything, there's more conversation to be had. There's more questions to be answered. There's interviews galore. There's all sorts of fun, and it all starts at noon. You can live stream us on YouTube or Rumble or any other platform where we live stream. Plus, if you want to listen to our podcast, just go to your favorite podcast platform, whether it's iTunes or Spotify. I don't know, and you do. Go there, search Mark Kaye Saves the Republic, download, listen, and enjoy.